Bill, what are the implications concerning multiple pathways for the new recovery advocacy movement?
Those implications are profound, Phil, and I think they've been profound since we came together in 2001 at the St. Paul Recovery Summit. When we met there, and out of which came Faces and Voices of Recovery and its collaboration with NCAD and Legal Action Center and other organizations to launch this larger recovery advocacy movement. It was critical to come up with some ideas that were different and separated it from earlier advocacy movements within the alcohol and drug problems arena. And we did start from the central position that recovery is a reality. That's what we wanted to say perhaps more than anything. But the second kinetic idea right behind that was an incredibly profound proclamation historically. And that was that there are multiple pathways of recovery and all are cause for celebration. That declaration broke down the historical divisions between 12-step groups and the secular recovery mutual aid groups and the religious groups and the professional treatment arena, and really forged a larger identity of people in recovery and families in recovery that simply allowed a situation where AA members could walk next to people in medication-assisted recovery, next to NA members, next to WFS and SOS and Life-Ring Secular Recovery, and on and on and on, and Smart Recovery members, marching not as members of those individual recovery societies, but simply marching as people in long-term recovery, celebrating the reality of recovery and the diversity of recovery pathways. What's emerging, I think, since then has been a growing ecumenical culture of recovery in the United States, celebrating this larger identity of people in recovery, forging a culture of recovery distinct from the culture of those individual recovery fellowships, with new recovery support institutions, such as the recovery community centers, recovery homes, recovery ministries, recovery cafes, recovery sports venues, et cetera, new recovery support roles such as the recovery coaches and the growth of peer recovery support services around the United States. I think we have yet to fully grasp what the emergence of this larger recovery culture will mean for that movement, and also what it'll mean for communities and the larger culture as a whole. My sense is that we are going to have a larger global movement towards health pushed by this recovery advocacy movement. And I think that will be healthy for very much healthy for people in recovery and families in recovery. But even more so, I think it's going to be really a healthy driving force within local communities as well.
Talk about recovery spaces, or I think the other term you've used is recovery landscapes.
Yeah, we tend to think of recovery as this very intrapersonal process, or a tight-knit interpersonal process within family in a close recovery support relationships. But here's what we've begun to understand. Imagine, for example, an adolescent who has been admitted for his 5th admission to inpatient substance use treatment. This adolescent is now an expert on that treatment, can do treatment very, very well, knows implicitly how to initiate recovery, can give lectures better than some of the counselors can at that particular treatment program. That adolescent does very, very well in his 5th treatment, as he did in his 4th, or as she did in her 3rd and 2nd. They are now discharged with this wonderful graduation ceremony, in which they are again given a ceremonial graduation chip and hugged and told to have a wonderful life as they return to the world of recovery in their community. They re-enter that community, having been institutionalized for the past 90 days. They wake up the next morning stir crazy to get out of this house. Where do they go? That's the question. Apart from any intrapersonal change they may have experienced, the question is there space within the community to support this young person as a person in recovery. And what we see repeatedly is that young person entering the life of this community in drug-saturated schools or drug-saturated neighborhoods, immediately drawn back to their past relationships, and those environments devour this adolescent and have them returning to drug use within a matter of hours or days, if not weeks. The question becomes, maybe it's time, rather than simply readmit this adolescent for a sixth treatment admission, that we go with that adolescent back into the life of their community and build the physical, psychological, social, and cultural space in that community where adolescents in recovery can survive by increasing the number of youth-oriented recovery support meetings, by increasing youth services within a recovery community center, building a recovery community center that serves youth, by increasing and building student assistance programs and recovery support groups within the schools. Those are examples of building space or building recovery landscapes within the community itself. And if we relate it to this concept of multiple pathways of recovery, is the question, do we have those diverse pathways of recovery supported within the life of a community? And in closing, let me just say one other group that I haven't mentioned yet. What about the individuals and families who are deeply grieving the loss of a partner or the loss of a family member due to addiction? What's recovery mean for them? And what are multiple pathways of recovery mean in the context of these deeply wounded families? I think where we're going to be going is to learn more about those families and their grief and their experience, and also what recovery means in the context of that kind of loss. And building the space in the community and inviting those families into the larger recovery movement and advocacy movements to join with us to help them both heal and also give meaning to their loss through recovery advocacy and peer support for other families in similar circumstances.